What makes the perfect chocolate chip cookie? It should be crispy, tender, chewy, and soft, which honestly is hard to achieve, but I've nailed it with this recipe using a few classical baking techniques, and this is hands down the last chocolate chip cookie recipe you'll ever need. First up, let's talk butter. Sound good? Let's bake. We're going to change things up out of the gate by adding 2 sticks or 1 cup of unsalted butter to a small sized sauce pot. Bring it back over to the cooktop, and over low to medium heat, we're going to brown the butter. Now I've timed this, and it usually takes me in between 9 and 11 minutes every single time I make a batch. The goal when making brown butter is to toast up the milk solids so that you get this deep nutty flavor in the butter, which in return will make our cookies much more delicious. The hardest part though is getting it to the perfect consistency. If you go too far, the milk solids will get too dark and have a slightly burnt taste to them when there's not enough time, and you're not going to get the intended effect. So in the end, don't go anywhere other than right over this pot. I usually know I'm super close to this being wrapped up when it starts to get real foamy like this, and then it starts to go down a bit. Let's have a look. And yeah, that's the color we're looking for right there. Perfect. I promise you, you can do this. And you'll notice throughout the process, it'll start to get a little brown edge around the outside. That's those milk fats starting to toast up. That's flavor. Scrape it off. That's the good stuff. Now, remove the pot from the heat, and remember I said 1 cup of butter. Well, during that cooking process, you're going to lose a few tablespoons, and just to prove it to you, take a look for yourself. Now to regain some of that lost moisture, skip the water and go straight for some fat. That's right, heavy whipping cream. Or you could do half and half in whole milk, no problem. The goal here is just to get it back to 1 cup. Baking tends to do better when there is precision and accuracy. Now we need to use this in our dough, but it's still too hot. So to chill it, just pop it in the fridge for 30 minutes to get it down to room temp or cool it. Or if you're in more of a hurry, just hit it in the freezer and it'll be good to go in 15 minutes. But in the meantime, while we wait, we're going to mix together our dry ingredients through a sifter. In goes in 2 1/4 cup all-purpose flour, followed up with 1 teaspoon baking soda, a ½ teaspoon baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, I used Diamond Crystal, and then for a little chef tip, a ½ tablespoon of cornstarch. This will help create a more delicate, lighter crumb, and it's the same technique world-renowned chefs like Christina Tosi, Stella Parks, and even Thomas Keller uses. It just works. Once everything's in there, you give it all a good sift, and yes, you can for sure just do this through a fine mesh strainer and a few shimmy shakes. And now it's time to break out the stand mixer, or of course, some electric hand beaters will work as well. In the bowl goes 1 cup of packed light brown sugar, followed up with a ½ cup of granulated sugar. For me, using both sugars is essential. You get the crispiness in the cookie from the granulated sugar, and then the light brown sugar, which is just sugar with molasses, is hygroscopic, which means it attracts and absorbs moisture, and that's where you get the chew from. The combo of both is perfection. At this point, I'm just going to fix the whisk attachment and hit the speed on low just to start to get some things moving around, and while this is mixing, let's grab that brown butter, and perfect. More solidified, but still pretty soft. Using a rubber spatula, get every last little morsel of that into the stand mixer. We're going to need all that moisture in there for these cookies. Even just little simple techniques like this matter because it always makes food worth remembering. Now once it's all in there, let's flip the speed to high and let it mix for 3 to 4 minutes. And you'll start to notice that everything becomes light and fluffy. This is what you want. You may even want to stop and scrape halfway through the process, and even though we brown the butter, we're still able to cream it, which is always a solid technique for making dang good cookies. Okay, once it all looks like this, we want to add in 2 large eggs, but 1 at a time. Don't add the second egg until the first one is completely mixed in. The goal is to build a stable emulsion for a more even texture and hydration. Cold to room temperature is all good. Then we're pouring in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now what I like to do once I add that is stop and give everything a really good straight before cranking it back to high speed for about 10 seconds to ensure everything is completely incorporated. And this right here looks perfect. We're getting so close to balling up and baking these cookies, I promise. But first, let's push the speed back down to low because it's time to add in the dry ingredients. And I'm going to be doing this in 3 stages. I usually just use a measuring cup. Don't add the second round of dry ingredients until the first one is at least most of the way mixed in. It probably takes a good 25 to 30 seconds, and it's totally cool if there's just a bit of flour remnants on the inside walls of the bowl. No problem. And I know adding things in batches can be annoying, but we want it to be just mix in. If you do over mix it, gluten will start to form and your cookies will be tough and they'll cook high. They won't spread out like normal. So this step is crucial. At this point, after the second stage of flour has been added, is when I do another stop and scrape. I know it can be a little annoying, but hey, I promised you the last cookie recipe you'll ever need, and I wasn't kidding. Okay. Now we're good to go and add in that last amount of dry ingredients. And after about 30 seconds, it looks great. And somehow it already smells good and I haven't even baked a dang thing yet. Let's remove the bowl, and I usually try to scrape the whisk as best I can to get as much of that goodness back in there as possible. But trust me, once you try one of these, you'll agree it's worth doing. So now it's time to bring out the chocolate. I'm going to be using semi-sweet chips, and then I've got a block of bittersweet that is 70% cacao, which is going to bring the cocoa intensity out and add a more refined chocolate taste. The combo of bittersweet and semi-sweet, to me anyways, is simply the best. When these two are together, it gives a deeper, richer chocolate flavor and rounds out the sweetness from all the sugar. If you use just milk chocolate, then it's going to be an overly sweet mess. Just trust me. And since I have 3 2-ounce bars for the bittersweet, my goal here is just to chop these up into smaller bite-sized pieces about the size of a regular chocolate chip or a bit bigger. This does not need to be perfect in any way, I promise. At this stage, let's just add all the cut up chocolate to our cookie dough bowl, and the extra little shavings from chopping it, well, I've got a little secret that is epic, but all the credit goes to my guy, Chef Brian Lagerstrom. So for now, just set it to the side. Next up, we're adding in 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips, and then using a rubber spatula, I'm just going to fold everything together, and any last little bits of dry ingredients from the sides of the bowl that didn't get mixed in with the mixer are now going to make its way in. Once everything is combined, first and foremost, try not to eat the dough, and secondly, there are a couple ways of getting them ready for baking. First, form them into golf ball sized dough balls in your hand that are roughly 3 to 4 ounces or about a half cup. Or the other option is by using an ice cream scooper. This works great, and what I used to use back in the restaurant days. You can use a massive scoop, small, medium size, you be the judge. For me, I really like that 3 to 4 ounce portion size because, well, that always gets me to a nice 12 equal size cookies. I know I can be too uniform sometimes, but hey, 15 years in professional kitchens, it'll do it to you. Just place them right on a sheet tray lined with parchment paper, and at this point, we're ready to bake. But first, grab those extra chocolate shavings and evenly sprinkle them over the top. I just love this. Huge shout out again to Brian for this great tip. Now when resting dough, it will help hydrate it. Think like when you're auto-leasing during the bread making process. It will help deepen the flavor, help with the structure, and reduce some of that spread when you bake it. Now if you've got 1 hour to rest it, great. If you've got 12 to 24, you will not believe how much better these cookies will be. So while these can go in the oven right now, if you're just licking your chops and can't help yourself, but let me introduce you to something that will really up your cookie making game. Think of this almost like marinating your cookies. Yeah, you already know I'm going this route. Wrap them up and then they're going in the fridge. Now, if you want to make a few batches of these, once they're chilled and harder, pop them in a bag and hit them in the freezer and pull them out whenever you want to bake it. Yes, straight from the freezer to the oven, no waiting. Okay, after a million tips, let's actually quit messing around and bake these. Since these are a good size, I usually bake 6 on a half sheet tray that's lined with parchment paper. They bake at 350 degrees F on a middle rack for 18 minutes on the dot, and seriously, within seconds, your house is going to smell like a professional bakery. It's so good. Let's have a look, and oh my goodness, do these look awesome. What I like to do at this stage is finish them off with a gentle season of Maldon salt. There is nothing like a perfectly seasoned cookie for the ultimate balance of sweet and salty. Now, when it comes to cooking or baking, one of the most important aspects is to account for carryover cooking. Just because it comes off or out of the heat doesn't mean it stops cooking right there, especially baking. So often people push on top of the cooking, think it's too soft, it's not done. They push it back in the oven and boom, before they know it, they're crispy, crunchy, and not at all what you want. If you're ever in doubt and still want that perfect chew in the center, just pull it a minute or two early. I promise you, you'll be all good. Now the hard part, the waiting game. Finally, you can serve these however you want, straight from the tray to your stomach, or stack them high with a bit more salt and pair them with the classic fattiest milk you can find. The chew, the crunch, the flavor, I'm in heaven right here. Now, if you really want to get into baking, check out my homemade focaccia bread recipe. It's the one I serve in my restaurant. Yeah, it's that good. I'll see you over there. That's already good. It's crunchy, it's chewy, it's tender. Bro, taking all these.